thank you so much. I hope you had a good experience watching this powerful movie. I'm going to ask a few questions to David so we can talk a little bit more in depth about this film, the process of the creation of the film, and what it means today. You have a journalistic approach that goes beyond the simple report of witnesses talking about what have happened to them, because you also look for a balance to accompany the images and the witnesses' account in the film. So in addition to the footage of the protests and the incidents, you have a lot of interviews with, of course, with victims of police brutality, but also with police officers and representatives of police unions, with lawyers, with historians, and various intellectuals. But really give it a way more balanced approach than one would think when you're watching a documentary about police violence. So we can start with an easy question, maybe. So to start off, how did you select the people who are speaking in the film, the people who were victims, and how did you select the footage from, that was available to you? Because you use footage from so many different angles and that came from different sources. So I think that would be interesting to know the starting process for that.
Pour les archives, en fait, ce film arrive après 2 ans de travail où j'ai compilé des centaines, voire des milliers de vidéos. J'avais 6 téras d'archives avant de commencer le film. Sur Twitter, j'ai fait des signalements en disant ici, à tel endroit, il y a eu un problème. Ici, à tel endroit, il y a eu un problème. Ici, à tel endroit, il y a eu un problème. Ce travail-là a suscité un débat en France, a été salué par l'ONU, par le Conseil de l'Europe, par le Parlement européen, et ça a provoqué un débat national. Le film, c'est la suite, et c'est tout à fait autre chose. Le film, il est là pour nourrir le débat, pour essayer d'apporter des perspectives philosophiques, sociologiques, historiques, et ne pas être justement dans le factuel. Et les protagonistes du film, je les ai tous retenus. Certains, je les connais depuis 25 ans, d'autres, je les ai connus presque quelques jours avant le film. Ils avaient tous en commun une chose, c'est l'envie de dialoguer. C'est de croire en la vertu du débat, du dialogue, de croire en la parole, y compris dans un moment aussi dur, aussi conflictuel, où il y a des enjeux terribles en France, comme aux États-Unis, comme partout dans les pays démocrates, comme dans les autres, autour de la police. Donc pour moi, c'était essentiel qu'on ne soit pas, c'est pas Fox News, c'est pas le punchline, le clash, le buzz, pas du tout. C'est des gens qui ne se connaissaient pas, que moi je connaissais et qui avaient envie de se parler. Je savais qu'ils avaient envie de se parler. Et donc le dispositif du film, c'est ça. Ce sont des conversations. C'est pas du tout des interviews. C'est pas du tout journalistique. Ce sont des gens autour d'une table qui se parlent, qui se jaugent, qui se séduisent, qui se contredisent, mais qui ne sont pas dans la réplique, qui sont dans la réflexion.
So the footage you see in the film is the result of 2 years of work, where 2 years in which I shot hundreds or thousands of videos. I actually had an archive of 6 terabyte of material before I even started the project. Anytime that there was an issue in a specific spot in a specific town, I would go and film it, and I would do it here and there and somewhere else. I did it in a lot of places, and this led to a very heated debate all over France. It rose up to national interest, and also at international level. It was discussed at the United Nations, at the Council of Europe, at the European Parliament, and it really gave rise to a very heated national debate. And this film is here to actually nourish this debate. adding a sociological and historical perspective. It's not based on the facts as they are, but some of the, in terms of the people, some of the people I have known for 25 years and others I'd met just a few days before I spoke to them. And what they had in common was that they all shared a deep desire to have a dialogue. They were all people who believed in the power of words, the power of talking and sharing ideas. At a time in which we are all facing this challenge in France, in the United States, in all democratic countries about the role of the police, I thought it was very important to deal with it not just as a punchline, just as a title. It was a way to get people to sit around a table, people who didn't know each other, but who wanted to discuss this, people who wanted to talk to each other. So it is not a film with a journalistic approach. They're not interviews. What it is that all these people are sitting around a table and they're not there to contradict each other. They're not there to scold each other. They're there to reflect together.
Thank you. It's a very detailed answer. In terms of the construction of the film, you have an arc, like different chapters that talk about police in so many different ways, which is, you have the history of state violence. So you start with Trotsky and Max Weber. You have the role of the police, which clearly is here to protect institutions, not to protect people, as one always hope it is. And then you talk about the legitimacy of state violence and the spectacle of violence. So can you talk about how you constructed the film in terms of a narrative arc to touch all these chapters, which makes the film so much more enriching?
L'idée première, c'est de partir de la phrase de Max Weber, l'État revendique pour son propre compte le monopole de la violence physique légitime. 1919, en une phrase, toute la problématique est là. C'est en quoi cette phrase est absolument fulgurante. Et le film pose simplement la question, c'est quoi l'État? C'est quoi le monopole? C'est quoi la violence légitime? Et surtout, alors ça c'est peut-être le côté français du film, c'est quoi la revendication? C'est quoi le fait qu'un État soit amené à devoir se justifier? Car Max Weber ne dit pas l'État a le monopole, il dit il le revendique. Donc le film, en fait, part de cette phrase-là et avance dans cette phrase-là petit à petit, évidemment avec des incursions dans d'autres choses, parce que derrière chaque mot, il y a tout un univers, ça ouvre des perspectives, mais au fond, c'est une déambulation philosophique. L'arche narrative, c'est cette phrase. Donc, en fait, je la faisais lire à tous les protagonistes. On n'a retenu qu'une seule lecture, mais dans le tournage, tous la lisaient et à tous, je demandais c'est quoi le mot le plus important pour vous? Et puis, c'était parti. Et le film, c'est ça. C'est-à-dire, c'est aussi, je l'espère, un film sur la pensée, un film sur la fusion. Les gens qui ont envie de parler, qui ont envie de réfléchir et d'échanger. On le voit notamment à la fin du film, quand il y a ce sociologue qui réfléchit à ce que Poutine et Macron se sont dit, mais ça aurait pu être Trump et je ne sais qui. C'est vraiment ça, c'est cette idée-là de réfléchir aux mots. Donc c'est un film sur l'image, mais c'est un film sur les mots.
The starting point was a quote by Max Weber, which translates as the state claims for itself the monopoly of legitimate physical violence. And it dates back to 1919. And so my intention was to study what does state mean? What does monopoly mean? What does legitimate violence mean? And because there's a French point of view, I really also wanted to focus on the claim part. So why is it that a state must justify itself for that? So that was the starting point. It was really the analysis of each word, because behind each and every one of these words, there's an entire universe. So it was more of a philosophical kind of walk in which I started off by having each one of the protagonists read this sentence, and I asked them, which one of these words is the most important one for you? And it was really a film about reflection, about thinking, about people who wanted to understand, to gain a deeper understanding of what these concepts mean. There's a section with a sociologist who analyzes a conversation between Putin and Macron, and he reflects upon what they are saying, what words they're using, and that could have been anyone else. It could have been a Trump there. It is a film made of images, but it truly, deep down, it is about words.
Chapeau.
It's something you mentioned. I mean, we know the movie specifically talk about the situation in France, and there are a lot of specific protests with the yellow vest, but as you said, it does open up internationally, not only because there's so many talks of police brutality in the US, since particularly since Black Lives Matter and the death of George Floyd. Even so, we talked about it before, but it really came to light for so many more people who were dismissing it before. And I'm also very interested in this conversation with Macron and Putin, which is short in the film, but does bring different points also in terms of how do you deal with violence? And when Putin says there's no violence in my country, yes, it's preventive state violence, as opposed to you can protest and be shot, or you're not allowed to protest. So in terms of the international angle, do you have any thoughts, additional thoughts about how you can discuss police brutality and state violence outside of France? You know, you mentioned the US. It's also it's also completely different than the French or the Russian. So can we discuss a little bit more internationally, or, you know, any thoughts?
Si vous voulez, ce à quoi on assiste ces dernières années, finalement, c'est à une crispation. Plus la crise économique sera grande, plus les inégalités seront grandes. Je veux dire que plus des gens pourront être milliardaires grâce au Covid. Je pense à Jeff Bezos qui voit sa fortune exploser parce qu'on ne peut pas sortir de chez nous et que donc on se fait livrer chez Amazon. Cette création d'inégalités va nécessairement, à un moment donné, être défendue par la police. C'est là le problème, si vous voulez. En France, les policiers disent « nous sommes le dernier rempart de la République ». Ailleurs, on vous dira « nous sommes le dernier rempart du capitalisme ». Nous sommes les garants, les soldats du capitalisme. Donc, vous avez dans les pays en révolution, évidemment, des problèmes avec la police, mais en fait, on sent de plus en plus qu'il y a une implication physique des manifestants parce que le ras-le-bol est plus grand, parce que la crise est immense, elle est économique, elle est environnementale. Et ce que la police incarne, au fond, aujourd'hui, plus que jamais, c'est les inégalités, c'est la survivance de ces inégalités. Alors ensuite, vous allez avoir, selon les pays, des réponses qui sont différentes. En Europe, la police allemande n'agit pas de la même manière que la police française, que la police anglaise, que la police espagnole, que la police chilienne, etc. Ce qui est intéressant, je crois, c'est dans le film, Michel Forst, ce rapporteur de l'ONU, qui nous donne justement cette vision internationale, qui nous dit, quand la France a fait ça, est-ce qu'elle a envoyé comme signal, parce que la France se croit toujours au centre du monde, elle ne l'est plus depuis très longtemps, mais elle a quand même écrit la Déclaration des droits de l'homme. Ça, c'est vrai. Eh bien, quand la France a agi comme elle a agi, certains pays, démocrates ou non, ont commencé à dire, mais puisque la France fait ça, nous, on peut le faire. Et les États-Unis, c'est exactement la même chose. Je veux dire, la force des États-Unis, sa superpuissance culturelle fait que quand un policier agit mal aux États-Unis, ça a des répercussions dans le monde entier. C'est pour ça que cette question-là, en fait, elle est en ce moment absolument mondiale. Et elle n'est pas tout à fait univoque, mais à grands traits, Max Weber nous ramène aux fondamentaux. Qu'est-ce que c'est que la violence légitime? En quoi le monopole est acceptable? Qui le revendique? On est toujours dans cette question-là. Je ne sais pas si ça a répondu à votre question.
Oui.
In a way, the economic crisis has only amplified inequalities. And just think of what happened to Jeff Bezos, who's become even more of a billionaire thanks to COVID, because we're all stuck at home and we get what we need delivered through Amazon. And so these inequalities have become a lot more marked and blatant, and therefore necessarily the police must come in. And in France, the police present themselves as the last bastions of the republic, and elsewhere the attitude is that they are the last bastions of capitalism. They're the soldiers of capitalism. And you even get to situations of physical amputation carried out by the police, which is just a manifestation of a different or higher level of people having being sick with everything, being, having reached their measure. It is just a manifestation of the crisis being bigger, more marked. So what the police embodies is this inequality. And if you look at what happens in Europe in terms of the European police, it's not the same all over Europe. The German police acts in a certain way, and the Italian police does it differently, and the French one in yet again another way. But if we think about Michel Fox, the representative from the United Nations, or discussed in the film, well, France is no longer at the center of the world. It hasn't been so for quite a while now, but it did write the Declaration of Human Rights. And likewise, the United States, who are such a cultural superpower, when a policeman in the United States behaves badly, well, the effect is perceived all over the globe. And but this doesn't happen the same way everywhere. And we have to go back to what Max Weber was telling us, what he taught us, which is to go back to the basics. What does legitimate violence mean? What is it? And who claims it for itself? I don't know if I answered your question with this.
You did. So can you say also a little bit more maybe about the way Putin police is described in Russia as a preventive police, where there's not the same amount of police brutality that you would see. First of all, it's not reported in the news. But then if people are arrested before they want to protest, then you have different needs for the police. It changes the monopoly of violence in a way.
Oui. Et c'est là où il y a un basculement. Alors, pour les États-Unis, je ne sais pas tout à fait comment ça se passe, mais en France, c'est ce qu'on a vu. Et au fond, ce qui est intéressant, quand je dis ce qu'on a vu, ça veut dire on a vu une police dite préventive au sens policier du terme, c'est-à-dire arrêter les gens avant qu'ils commettent. Donc là, d'une certaine manière, c'est Spielberg, hein, c'est Minority Report, c'est Philippe Cadic. Hein, on arrête les gens, le criminel, avant qu'il commette. On est là-dedans. Alors, évidemment, quand c'est Spielberg, c'est bien. Quand c'est la police, c'est plus compliqué. Et quand je dis plus compliqué, en fait, c'est assez grave. Parce que tout ça remonte à quelque chose qui s'est passé pas loin du Lincoln Center. C'est le 11 septembre. C'est l'antiterrorisme. L'antiterrorisme a totalement modifié la police occidentale. Et l'idée de faire de la police préventive, c'est vraiment lié à l'antiterrorisme. L'antiterrorisme, il a évidemment sa légitimité. Mais quand l'antiterrorisme, qui est des mesures d'exception, devient la règle, passe dans ce qu'on appelle le droit commun, alors là, on a un problème avec les libertés fondamentales, un problème avec les libertés publiques et individuelles. Et donc, cette question-là, en Russie, elle est très claire. Pays absolument pas libre, on arrête les gens avant qu'ils manifestent. Mais en fait, on y vient ici. Quand je dis ici, Lafayette, quoi. La France, les États-Unis. Voilà, c'est ça que je veux dire. On vient à ça. Et là, c'est pas possible. C'est-à-dire que là, on doit absolument se soulever par rapport à ça.
Well, there's been a big switch. For the United States, I'm not even sure how it works, but in France, what we have witnessed is that preventive police activities have been carried out more and more. People get arrested before they have a chance to do anything. And we are basically in what Spielberg showed in Minority Report. So when Spielberg does it, that's one thing. But when the actual police does it, well, that's a big deal, and that's bad. We have to think of what happened with the World Trade Center and with the whole anti-terrorism concept. You know, September 11 radically changed everything for us, for the Western world, and you know, the concept of anti-terrorism as such is definitely legitimate in and of itself, but when it becomes the rule, when it becomes part of what's commonly accepted as as common law, well, that's no longer fine. Russia is a country which is not free, and people do get arrested before they have a chance to say anything or do anything, but we are getting to that point almost. And when I say we, I'm thinking Lafayette, I'm thinking the US and France. And when that happens, well, that cannot be tolerated. That's something that we need to rise up against.
So that brings me to a question that I think is always important in terms of cinema, because films are made to be experienced as a viewer, sometimes for beauty, for yourself, but often also to have a common discourse. And a movie like this, I think, needs to be seen by a lot of people, but people from different angles too. In one way, in France, there's a sort of monopoly of news too. It's changing a bit with social media and Facebook, things like this, but there's a strong monopoly of news where a lot of people watch the 8 o'clock news at night, and they see one point of view. This is the point of view of the state. Sometimes there's like a little bit of violence and the suburbs rising, but most people are on the side of what they call the law and the police, and they don't understand that it's more bigger than that. So I had interesting conversation with people that I find fairly democratic and left-sided, but they still think the Gilets jaunes are at fault. They should not loot. And it's the same in the US. It's the same everywhere, where you have a tendency to follow the order. So as a director, obviously, as someone, as a filmmaker, as a writer, as someone who communicates with an audience, what do you see your role now in terms of sharing this film with the audience? Where do you place yourself, and what do you hope to accomplish with it?
Oui, si on parle en termes de cinéma, moi je pense que ce film, c'est un contre-récit, c'est-à-dire il offre le contre-champ. Voilà. Si on parle cinéma, c'est le contre-champ. Le champ, ce serait la machine médiatico-policière qui est très puissante en France, mais qui l'est aussi aux États-Unis. C'est-à-dire qu'évidemment qu'aux États-Unis, il y a des journaux de qualité, mais la machine quand même, c'est law and order, quoi. C'est quand même ça, au fond, ce qui passe et ce qui repasse. La révolution et le geste cinéma de notre côté, et la révolution, c'est les réseaux sociaux, c'est-à-dire c'est l'idée que des gens puissent filmer, mais surtout diffuser. Le seul problème, c'est que c'est sur petit écran, c'est sur nos téléphones, c'est sur Twitter, on scrolle, on swipe, on partage et on oublie. En prenant ces images, en les mettant sur grand écran, en les rendant plus grandes que nous, Je pense, enfin j'espère leur rendre hommage, mais surtout leur donner leur vraie place. C'est du cinéma direct, c'est du cinéma brut, c'est l'histoire, c'est l'histoire. Et le médium et le message, comme disait le Canadien un peu plus haut. En étant au cinéma, en regardant ensemble ces images, on réfléchit ensemble. Et à travers cette réflexion, on réfléchit au rôle de la police, au rôle de l'image et à notre rôle personnel par rapport à ça, la construction médiatique et la force policière. C'est ça l'idée du film. L'idée du film, c'est d'être absolument dans l'interaction, finalement, dans la réflexion, mais active, par l'émotion, par le grand écran, par le fauteuil, par le collectif. C'est le cinéma.
In terms of cinema, actually, this film is a reverse way of telling a story, a counter narrative. If you want to make a parallel, it would be a reverse shot. And the shot would be the whole setup created by the media and the police that is very strong in France. And also in the US. Of course, in the US, you do have high quality papers, but the main narrative hinges around law and order. And the revolution, on the other hand, is what is being done via social media, and people film things on their own and then share it. And that's how information gets disseminated. And the issue there is that they do so on a small screen and people scroll and swipe and share and then they forget about it. However, on the big screen, something that's bigger than us, it's a way to pay homage, pay tribute to these stories. It's a way to give them their true place. It's a direct way, it's a raw way. It's what history is all about. To go back to what a Canadian author had stated, Macklin, in his work by the title, The Medium is the Message, what we watch is what the medium creates the narrative. It's all about the role of the police, which in the way it is depicted, it is associated to strength and to force and power. That's the construct that the media create. However, when we're watching the story in the cinema, we perform an act of active reflection. We see it on the big screen, and that's the magic of cinema.
I have one final question for you, David. All the protagonists in the film, the victims, as well as the police union and people who were involved in the protest and the aftermath, have you seen the film and have you seen it together, like the finished film?
Alors, à cause du confinement en France, ça a été très compliqué. Donc, on a organisé évidemment des projections entre tous les protagonistes. Certains n'ont pas pu venir, ils ne l'ont pas tous vu, mais ils le verront tous avant sa sortie en salle, évidemment. C'est la moindre des choses. Je crois que certains sont un peu inquiets. Pas forcément ceux auxquels on croit. Ceux qui l'ont vu, et parfois il y a des policiers, parfois il y a des gens de l'autre côté de la barricade, ont apprécié l'honnêteté intellectuelle, tout en reconnaissant qu'il y a évidemment un parti pris. C'est un film de cinéma, c'est pas un reportage. Donc il y a un parti pris du début à la fin, dès le début, avec ces deux personnes qui ont perdu un œil, ces deux éborgnés. Je vous mets tout de suite de leur côté. Je mets le spectateur tout de suite de leur côté. Reste que, c'est ce qu'on disait au départ, il y a cette idée de dialogue, cette idée de débat. Si on n'a pas de dialogue, si on n'a pas de débat, on n'est pas dans la démocratie. On passe à autre chose. Et donc ce film-là, a priori, les protagonistes ont l'air de bien l'apprécier, au moins pour cette raison-là. Mais je dois vous dire que d'autres qui ne l'ont pas vu notamment des syndicats de police, ont fait des tracts contre moi, contre le film, avant même de l'avoir vu. Et là, à mon avis, c'est très préoccupant parce que ça veut dire que la police voudrait aussi se préoccuper de la pensée, voudrait aussi se préoccuper de la culture, voudrait aussi se préoccuper de ce que l'on peut dire ou ne pas dire. Et c'est incroyable de se dire qu'à la limite, les gens qui sont aujourd'hui là, vous êtes dans un fauteuil, c'est presque devenu un acte subversif. Ce même acte qui, il n'y a pas si longtemps, était tout à fait naturel pour tout New-Yorkais, Parisien ou tout ce qu'on veut, ça pourrait presque devenir un acte subversif. Voilà où on en est.
Well, actually, because of the lockdown in France, it turned out to be a little complicated. We did organize some screenings. Some could come and see it, but not all could make it. But of course, we will have other screenings before it comes out in movies. That's the least we could do. Some are actually worried, and not necessarily the ones we would think would be. Some on the police side and some on the other side, however, have appreciated the intellectual honesty that they saw in it. Having said that, there is an attitude where one takes sides. Of course, when I show somebody who lost an eye, somebody who was attacked to an eye and therefore lost their sight, well, I'm immediately on their side, and I create a situation in which the viewer immediately sides with them as well. But there is still a dialogue, there's still a debate, because if we don't do that, well, then there's no democracy. So the protagonists in general did appreciate the film quite a lot. But there are some people who were not involved with the making of the film and who didn't even watch it. And I'm talking about some police unions who actually tried to block it or had a negative attitude towards it. And that is really a cause of concern for me. And because it leads to a situation in which one cannot even freely express their thought. The police is getting involved with people's thoughts, with culture, and that is something that we can't tolerate. We can't keep quiet in front of that. It's as if the sheer act of thinking has become a revolutionary act, and it is something that we've always taken for granted. You are on your sofa at home in New York or in Paris, and you think you're free to think and to express yourself. Well, not necessarily so. That's where it has gotten to.
Well, thank you so much for having shared your thoughts on the film and the way you made it, your hope for the film. I really hope that the movie will be seen by a lot of people, definitely in France when it comes out, I think next month. And then maybe in different countries, whenever we can move on to a world post-pandemic with back in the big screening room. It was great to see you in person, or to see you through a screen, if not in person. And thank you so much, Lilia, for translating, as always. It was great.
You're welcome.
So thank you so much, David. Thank you so much, Lilia. And thanks to the audience for having been with us today.